All right, so I grew up in London. And my early memories, I guess the first real memories I have was when I was 7 and saw Star Wars. So I was one of those people that lined up with my parents because I would have been like 7.5 or something like that when Star Wars came out. And that kind of set me on my track of, getting into tech and space stuff. So I became obsessed with space at that point. So I went to the library and got all the space books out of the library, and I was, that was my obsession, was space. So I decided I'd be an astronaut, as you do when you're 7. So my whole kind of rest of my childhood was kind of building up to figuring out how to be an astronaut. So when I went through school, I did all the usual kind of science subjects, all leading to figuring out how you be an astronaut. And I discovered that most astronauts kind of have lots of skills. They have, maybe a PhD, or they may be a doctor or a test pilot or whatever. So I discovered you could do a degree in astronautics and aeronautics. So that's what I signed up to do. So I went to the University of Southampton, which was one of the only universities that had a degree in aeronautics and astronautics. So I started that and loved it. It was amazing. You could learn, how to design spacecrafts. I actually did subjects called spacecraft design. I couldn't quite believe my luck. So about halfway through my degree of aeronautics and astronautics, I had this option to sort of take a slight, tangent and go down a different path. And I took that option, which was called aerospace systems engineering. And that's where we focus more on computing and all the electronics and software and programming associated with aerospace and space. So that's how I kind of finished off my degree. And then I realized, I needed to do a PhD, because that seems to be what all the astronauts would do. That weren't test pilots. I clearly wasn't going to be a test pilot. So I started hunting around for PhDs. At the same time, I also just tested sort of, my courage out. Could I be an astronaut? So I took up parachuting, rock climbing, did a few flying lessons, all that sort of stuff, just to make sure I wasn't going to be too scared. Did some bungee jumping. And it was all good. It was scary, but I could throw myself out of a plane. That was fine. And then I, hunted down a PhD. And then there was, I remember, a very amazing day where I had to ring up my supervisor at the university, who had looked for some PhD topics for me. And so I went to a phone box. Remember, this was before common email and all that sort of stuff. So this would have been in 1991. Yeah, I think 1991. And I had an appointment to ring my supervisor to see what PhDs were on offer. And before that, I had about 3 hours to kill. And I went to see a movie, Terminator 2. And that movie, as most people will know, is about a robot, and there was a lot of robot kind of vision stuff. So there was a lot of that. You would see through the eyes of the Terminator, right? And you would see all this kind of cool stuff. So I got out of the cinema, rang up my supervisor, and he said, okay, we've got 3 PhDs on offer. You could do one in jet engines, I think it was, one in some sort of aerodynamics thing, and one in robot vision systems. And I'm like, well, that's pretty easy. I'll just do the robot vision systems one. And up to that point, I hadn't really done much in robotics or even thought much about robotics other than loving R2-D2 and C-3PO. So that's what I picked. And that's really what led me into robotics, that random choice on that day.